Okay, last time we were together, you saw me salvaging the old windshield out of the old windshield frame, and it's in really good shape. Looks good. I don't think there's a single rock chip on it. I believe it was pretty new. So it looks good. However, I had siliconed it around the old windshield seal because it used to leak down the glass. So I've got to finish cleaning that silicone off around the edge of this thing, and then it'll be ready to go back in the new frame. I have ordered the new seal for the frame. It's not here yet, but it should be here either tomorrow or early next week. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of get this thing back in that frame there. And then I can start in on my windshield wiper arms and motor and all that kind of stuff. So I mentioned last time I've got all the old parts out. I've got the old motor out. I've got a battery sitting around here. In fact, I got a lot of batteries sitting around here, but we're going to put a little juice to that motor and just make sure it's good. And if not, then I'll order a new motor to put everything back together with. So let's tear in. I'm going to finish cleaning up this windshield and then we'll set it aside and do some other stuff. Well, if I was operating under the illusion that I was all done sanding, I was just kidding myself. So I have sanded down the cover for the windshield wiper motor and the backing plate that it backs up against. Now I haven't completely taken this whole thing down to bare metal, but most of this, as you can see, gets covered up by the actual motor cover. So I'm not too concerned about all of this back in here. I just want to get it sealed up well, but this part up here you will see, so I've taken that down to bare metal. A little bit of rust in a couple of the corners here. I'll work on those a little bit more. I'm not totally convinced I've got that ready to go, but those are the start of my inventory of parts that will still need to be painted. Here's my hood or my door hinges, the bottom part of the hinge, those will need to be painted, and my hood tie downs, which I've already discussed. I don't think these are the right ones. I think this is supposed to be kind of spring-loaded, and I might just go get the ones off the old hood and see if indeed they are. But the project's going along pretty well. I was a little concerned about whether or not this reproduction windshield frame had my little notches that when that motor that windshield wiper pivot point comes through. Remember I showed you that little notch that's got to like key into the thing to keep the base from spinning. I'm going to turn you around and show you up close one of these holes in this reproduction windshield frame. It does have the notch, so hang on, I'll show you. Okay, so I think you can see that. Right at the top up here is our little notch, and that's what we need, so that's good. So yeah, we're making good progress for the day. I'll just tune those up a little further, and then I'm sure I still have some primer around here. Slap a coat of primer on there so we don't flash rust my bare metal there, and then move on to whatever happens to be next in the process here. Okay, well, I've been doing some work that I didn't make you watch me do. So I went out in the Jeep resting area out there, and I was scrounging around all over in the garage here, and I can't find them. I know they're here somewhere, but I pulled these plates off of the old CJ-7 out there. These are what goes on the back of the windshield frame. And then you have your big, kind of plastic twist lock screw that goes in to hold the windshield frame in place. So, you fold it down, fold it up, put the bolt through here, and it stays in place. So I brought those in. There was a little bit of surface rust on the back here where it was up against the old windshield frame. So I have sanded these down. I'm going to give them a shot of primer and get ready for them to be painted when I do my little assortment of stuff that needs to be painted. Now, while I was out there, I noticed that I still had the bottom door hinges on that CJ-7. And I went ahead and pulled those off. I did that for a reason. First of all, they have these tapered screws that hold them, and so the hole in the old hinge is tapered such that that screw goes in there nice and flat, and it's one of those star head screws. And then inside of the Jeep, on the other side of the fender, is this plate that this screws into. So rather than having to try to put nuts in there and deal with all that, you screw this plate up against the back side. So I decided to go ahead and bring those in. I compared them to the new hinges that I bought. And so here's the new hinge that I bought. Here's the old hinge that came off the Jeep. A little bit thicker steel here. I doubt you'll be able to really tell the difference, but it is a little bit thicker. And interestingly enough, the hole on the original is slightly smaller than the hole on the replacement, looks to me like. Might be a little optical illusion, but I'm going to use the old ones. Now, the backer plates, again, have just a little bit of surface rust where they were up against the fender, the inner fender. I've taken this one and cleaned it all up and got it ready to go in the primer pile here. I'm not too worried about the inside side. This was just black. These are going to get treated with black paint. They are not going to be the black cherry because these are going to be on the inside of the tub. So I've got all the little tapered screws. I'll brush up the head of those a little bit so that I can give those a shot of paint. And I've got the round head star screws that went into the back of the windshield frame to mount these up there. So a few more parts to go onto our table here to get primed up. And I'm going to spin you around and show you what we've done so far. So stand by, hold on, strap in. So here is our windshield washer motor cover and that backer plate. I've put a coat of primer on both sides of this thing right now. Again, most of this back here gets covered by this, but while we're painting, we're going to paint it up anyway. So this will need to get a nice paint cover of the black cherry with the clear coat, as will at least this face of this thing, because that's what shows up above it. So this is my collection so far of stuff that's going to need to be painted, less these new factory replacement door hinges. I think you can kind of see there the difference in those bolt holes, the tapered holes versus the straight holes. So yeah, I think that's worth doing to clean these up. And again, they're in pretty good shape. All I'm really doing with them is just taking off the old paint. No real rust on those, so we're cruising right along. Okay, so I said I was going to test this wiper motor, or I went to all the trouble of getting it cleaned up and put back in the Jeep. So let's test. Here's what I've got. I've got a battery. Pay no attention to the fact that it's a little dirty. It is a battery, in fact. I've got a gauge that I was going to put in the truck that lets you have your voltage for both two different batteries, but this didn't fit in my little blank, so I had to get a different one, but I didn't wind up sending this one back. So I'm going to use that to make sure we've got voltage, and here's our connector for our wiper motor, and I've got a couple wires. I'm just going to stick those in that plug and kind of then touch them to the battery and see what happens. But first, let's make sure our battery's got juice. So I'm gonna get you situated so you can watch me do my work, and I'm gonna do my work here. All right, so again, this is just our little unit that we're gonna use to test, make sure we got voltage here. Plus side of the battery is here, minus side is over here. Now, probably shouldn't have rubbed my hand on that, but we've got voltage. Let's see how much we got. Ooh, only 10 volts. Not optimal. That battery probably should have been charged, but it's okay. It's enough to give us a indication if this is working or not. So in our plug, we've got red and black here. I'm going to assume black is negative, red is positive. So I've just shoved these wires in there, and let's see what happens when we touch these to that. Nothing. Okay, so maybe black's got to go to the green down here to act like we completed our circuit. All right, well, there we go. Our wiper motor still works. It's a little gross looking. I'm going to clean it up and see how it looks once we're all clean. It's got a rubber kind of bushing or gasket or whatever here that's going to mount it up against a little box that it goes into. I'm just going to take a wire brush to it a little bit and clean it off and see if it looks good enough to put in there. Okay, well, I cleaned this thing up a little bit with the wire wheel. It doesn't look too bad right now, but it was a little noisy. And as it was running, and I looked at it, I realized there's this little screw right up here at the top. And there's only one, and it just makes me wonder if this thing is supposed to have a little oil on the gears that are turning in here to turn that electric motor and change it the other direction and make this guy go round and round and round. And maybe the reason it was noisy was because it needs a little oil. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm taking that screw out right now. So it's just a little threaded screw here. And let's see what we've got. So the end of it is got a little fluid on it, it looks like. I'm going to grab a paper towel and let's see what we got here. So customer states it's been only 5,000 miles since the last oil change. Yeah, there's nothing in there. I'm not 100% sure that's a fluid reservoir, because as I'm looking down in there, it almost seems like maybe it's more, it looks to me like instead of looking down into a reservoir, I'm looking down at a plug or another unit in there that maybe this is an adjustment thing. So I'm not sure, but I could deconstruct this a little further, it looks like. If I take the just screwing that thing back in there. The weird thing is it seems like it goes all the way in and seats, which feels like a plug more than some kind of an adjustment, but it is right in line with the center line of the motor here. So I'm not really sure. But what I'm going to do, it looks like if I take the lever off the arm by undoing this bolt right here, then I could take this gasket rubber bushing thing off, and then it looks like there's 3 little bolts here that would take the cover off of our little gearbox here, and that would let me see inside of there. And Curious George in me wants to do that. So I'm going to open this thing up, see what we got. So stand by. I'll do that. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to let you watch. I'll set it down here and I'll get the camera kind of close, and we'll see. We'll experience this together. All right, well, isn't that interesting? So this is a conductive surface that's wired to our wires, and it obviously was meant to somehow interact with that copper piece right there, which then also is touching those two little things there that are down in that little thing there. So not oil, it looks like, but there's some grease on that. So that's what we're seeing in there is grease. And yeah, so let me clean my finger off so I can show you what I think is going on here. So this is our gear that turns against our screw in there. And that screw that I took out is right there. So it looks like that was meant to give you a way to maybe, well, I don't know what the heck that was for, but this is our gear that goes around and around. And in these two little areas here, we've got these two little pieces of metal that are like a little round piece of metal. And then we had this little copper piece right here that is pretty just much a little flat piece of copper cut to fit into that spot right there. So as that's going around, that's effectively making some kind of contact with this back part of this thing. Yeah, I don't know what it's doing, but I do think that I kind of trashed my gasket. So Curious George got the best of me, and I think I will go order me a new wiper motor because I don't know how to, if I put it all back together, is it still going to work? And then how serious is it that I fix this gasket? I could just put some sealant on there, except it is meant to kind of cover the hole here. So yeah, interesting. Okay, I am off to stimulate the economy a little bit. While I was thinking to myself, I'll just buy a new windshield wiper motor, I started thinking, oh, that reminds me, I've got to get my speedometer coming in. And I think I've told you before, I do want to do one of those GPS electronic speedometers because I already know I got bigger tires on here than stock. And, you know, Jeep guys are used to it. We all know the drill. Your speedometer is never right. So you're always driving down the road trying to go, oh, it says 70, that means I'm really doing 75 or 65 or whatever. You're always in the head trying to do this mental math. But now they make those electronic speedometers with a little GPS antenna, and it talks to all the satellites up there. And as long as the satellites keep flying, you always know how fast you're going for real, regardless of how big your tires are or what you've done with your gear ratios, etc. So I'm going to order one of those, and while I'm at it, I'm going to order a new oil pressure and temperature gauge to go with it, hopefully with a set that looks the same, has the same style and font of numbers and all that kind of stuff. But I do have a question for those of you who have traveled this road before me. We've talked about how that back of that reproduction dashboard does not have the little screws in place already to hold the speedometer in place. Everything else, I think, like the rest of the gauges, will go in and they'll have kind of a little clamp on the back. But that speedometer is intended to go into a hole from the back with the little 4 screw holes around it, and the screws are already supposed to be there on the back of the dash, and they're not on these reproduction dashes. So how'd you deal with that? What did you do to hold your speedometer in place? Leave me a comment and let me know what you did. So for now, I'll be looking for those comments. I'll be searching around on the Jeep forums and probably posting a few questions out there going, did anyone else cross this bridge? Because I know people have dealt with it, and I know there must be a way around it. I just don't know what it is right now, and I'm thinking about it, and I haven't really come up with any great ideas. So got to solve that. I think about that'll be, for the most part, all I need to then really get started on wiring, because I'll have all my gauges. I can get the back of my dash wired up and then get it in place for good. I then can kind of, start to get the marker lights and the tail lights and the headlights and all that stuff ready to go, and start to reassemble that front end a little bit and get the grill in, and I'll have to order a radiator. So I'll be keeping the economy going, that's for sure. But that's my job. That's what you do when you do these Jeep projects, is you roll the Benjamins out into the world and let them float around and do good for other people. So I'll be doing some of that. But for now, I'm going to go be doing a little Formula One watching. And then because it's so stinking hot in this valley, it's things like a microwave down in here. The heat just radiates in off the mountains, I think, and it's really hot. So I will probably fire up one of the fun little cars I have and take a drive up in a canyon or something, get out of this heat a little bit before my brains bake out. But I will see you next time around. Hopefully by then I'll have some new parts and we'll start to put some parts in and get going on this wiring. But again, if you know the trick for keeping that speedometer in place with no screws behind the dash, please share it with me. Let me know what you did. All right. Thanks for watching. See you next time.